Aragorn, one of the most iconic characters in J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, has a lineage as ancient and noble as Middle-earth itself. To understand the depth of his character, his destiny, and the significant role he plays in the fate of Middle-earth, it is crucial to trace his birth and the royal bloodline from which he descends. His ancestry is not merely a family tree. It embodies the history of kingdoms long fallen, lost glories, and the hope of a restored realm. Aragorn is not just a man, but the living heir to a legacy that reaches back to the earliest ages of Middle-earth. The line of Elendil and the kings of Arnor and Gondor. Aragorn is a direct descendant of Elendil the Tall, the High King of Arnor and Gondor, who was one of the greatest men of the Second Age. Elendil, also called the Faithful, fled the destruction of Númenor, an island kingdom of men whose pride led to its downfall, and founded the realms of Arnor in the north and Gondor in the south on the continent of Middle-earth. His sons, Isildur and Númenórean, inherited these kingdoms. Isildur, Aragorn's ancestor, was the key figure who cut the One Ring from Sauron's hand during the last alliance of elves and men, though he failed to destroy it, which would later bring tragedy. The bloodline Aragorn inherits is often referred to as the Dúnedain, the men of the West, descended from the Númenóreans. This lineage grants Aragorn longevity and heightened abilities beyond ordinary men, as well as a profound connection to the ancient traditions and lore of his ancestors. The Dúnedain were once kings and rulers of vast lands, but over millennia their realm diminished, and many of their descendants became hidden wanderers, protecting Middle-earth quietly and largely forgotten. The decline of Arnor and the scattering of the heirs. Arnor, the northern kingdom established by Elendil, was once a flourishing realm. However, due to internal strife, wars, and attacks from the dark forces of Angmar, Arnor fell into ruin and division by the Third Age. Its remnants split into smaller realms, Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rudar, but none with the strength to resist evil for long. Over time, the heirs of Isildur were scattered, and their numbers thinned. The line of kings in the north faded into legend, and the heirs became known as rangers, wandering protectors of the wild lands. Aragorn's immediate family descends from this line of lost kings. His father, Arathorn II, was the chieftain of the Dúnedain Rangers of the North. His mother, Gilrain, was of noble Dúnedain descent as well. Aragorn was born in the year 2931 of the Third Age, a time when the shadow of Sauron was beginning to rise once more. His birth came with hope, but also danger, as the enemies of his line sought to destroy any surviving heirs to prevent the return of the king. The significance of Aragorn's birth. Aragorn's birth was steeped in prophecy and expectation. Being the last heir of Isildur, many believed he was destined to reclaim the thrones of both Arnor and Gondor, uniting the kingdoms once again and ushering in a new era of peace and prosperity. His birth represented the continuation of a bloodline that had survived millennia of darkness and turmoil. From the outset, Aragorn's birth was kept secret to protect him from the servants of Sauron, who hunted the heirs of Elendil. His mother, Gilrain, and his father ensured that he would be raised safely away from the dangers that lurked in the wider world. This secrecy was critical because the survival of their bloodline was a beacon of hope for those resisting the growing power of the Dark Lord. The name Aragorn and its meaning. The name Aragorn itself is significant, meaning revered king, or king's valor in Sindarin, one of the Elvish tongues. It speaks to the great destiny that awaited him. He was also known by many other names and titles throughout his life. Estel, meaning hope in Sindarin, during his youth, Strider as a ranger, and eventually Elessar, the Elfstone, after his ascension to the throne. These names reflect the different facets of his identity. A secret hope kept hidden during his youth, a wandering protector of Middle-earth, and a revered king who would restore the ancient glory of his ancestors. Each name marks a chapter in his life, linking him to the lore and history of the world around him. The role of Elrond and Rivendell in Aragorn's early life. A critical figure in Aragorn's early life was Elrond, the Lord of Rivendell. After the death of Aragorn's father, Arathorn II, when Aragorn was only 2 years old, Elrond took the boy into his household to raise him in safety and wisdom. Rivendell, a hidden refuge of the elves, provided sanctuary and education. Elrond raised Aragorn with knowledge of his heritage and the responsibility it entailed. He trained him in history, languages, and lore, preparing him not just to survive, but to one day reclaim his rightful place. Despite this education, Aragorn lived much of his youth under the name Estel, shielded from the burdens of his destiny until he was ready to face it. The prophecy of the return of the king. Aragorn's birth and bloodline are closely tied to the prophecy of the return of the king. For centuries, hope lingered among the free peoples of Middle-earth that the king would return to unite the realms of Arnor and Gondor and defeat the dark forces threatening their lands. This prophecy kept alive the memory of the ancient line of kings and inspired many to hold on to hope despite overwhelming odds. Aragorn was the fulfillment of this ancient hope. His birth marked the beginning of the end of Sauron's long shadow, but his path was fraught with challenges, and the mantle of kingship was not something he claimed lightly or without struggle. The prophecy gave him purpose and direction, guiding his every step toward reclaiming his throne and healing the fractured lands. Conclusion. The foundation of a legend. The birth and lineage of Aragorn set the stage for everything that follows in his remarkable life. He was not simply a man born into nobility, but a living symbol of hope, endurance, and the potential for renewal. His bloodline connected him to the ancient glory of Númenor, the heroism of Elendil, and the legacy of Isildur, each a vital thread in the tapestry of Middle-earth's history. Understanding Aragorn's origins allows us to appreciate the depth of his character and the monumental significance of his journey. From a hidden child in Rivendell to the restored King Elessar, Aragorn's life is a testament to the enduring power of hope and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of darkness. Aragorn's childhood and upbringing are foundational to understanding the man he becomes, a wise leader, a skilled warrior, and the destined king of Gondor and Arnor. Born into a time of danger and uncertainty, Aragorn's early years were shaped by both the love of his family and the heavy burden of his heritage. His youth was marked by secrecy, education, and preparation for a destiny far greater than most could imagine. This section explores the circumstances of his childhood, the influences that molded him, and the environment that allowed him to grow into the leader Middle-earth desperately needed. The loss of Arathorn II and early guardianship. Aragorn was born in the year 2931 of the Third Age, to Arathorn II, chieftain of the Dúnedain Rangers and Gilrain. His birth was a beacon of hope for the scattered remnants of the Dúnedain, the descendants of the great Númenórean kings who had long since fallen into obscurity. However, tragedy struck early in Aragorn's life when his father was killed by orcs when Aragorn was only 2 years old. This loss left Aragorn and his mother vulnerable, as enemies of the line of Isildur sought to extinguish the last heirs. In the wake of Arathorn's death, Gilrain took the critical step of entrusting young Aragorn to the care of Elrond, Lord of Rivendell. This decision ensured Aragorn's safety and marked the beginning of his life under the tutelage of one of the wisest beings in Middle-earth. Rivendell, hidden deep in the folds of the Misty Mountains, was a sanctuary protected by ancient magic, providing a safe haven from the dark forces that hunted the heirs of Elendil. Growing up in Rivendell, a place of lore and learning, Rivendell was not just a refuge. It was a center of knowledge, culture, and power. Raised under Elrond's watchful eye, Aragorn was given access to education and training that few mortals could ever hope to receive. Here, he learned the history of Middle-earth, the lore of the elves and men, and the languages of many peoples. His lessons included the ancient tongues of Sindarin and Quenya, which connected him to the elven heritage and the deeper currents of the world. Elrond also prepared Aragorn for the burdens of leadership. He was taught strategy, diplomacy, and the delicate art of ruling diverse peoples. This education was vital, as Aragorn's destiny was to unite not just kingdoms but cultures long estranged and fractured by centuries of conflict. Yet, despite this privileged upbringing, Aragorn's life was not that of a typical noble child. The secrecy surrounding his identity meant he was known as Estel, which means hope in Sindarin. This name was given to shield him from his enemies and protect the fragile hope that his lineage represented. He was raised with humility and a sense of duty, rather than pride or entitlement. The weight of prophecy and identity. Aragorn's upbringing was deeply intertwined with the weight of prophecy. From an early age, he was made aware of his heritage and the role he was expected to play. However, this knowledge came with the understanding that his path would be fraught with hardship, sacrifice, and peril. Despite his noble blood, Aragorn was not raised as a king in waiting, but as a guardian of the world's hope, a protector ready to walk a difficult path. The duality of his identity, as both a hidden heir and a future king, shaped his character. It instilled in him a blend of patience, wisdom, and resilience. This internal struggle would stay with Aragorn throughout his life. The tension between embracing his destiny and living as a ranger among common folk gave him unique insight into the value of humility, justice, and leadership. Early skills and training. The making of a ranger. In addition to his scholarly education, Aragorn was rigorously trained in martial skills. The Rangers, known for their stealth, endurance, and combat prowess, were the remnants of the northern Dúnedain who kept watch over the wild lands, protecting the borders of Middle-earth from the encroaching darkness. Aragorn's training included swordsmanship, archery, tracking, and survival in harsh environments. He learned to navigate forests, mountains, and plains, developing a profound connection with the land he was sworn to protect. These skills would later prove invaluable in his role as the leader of the Fellowship and the king who would reclaim his throne. He also learned the use of healing arts, drawing from ancient knowledge preserved by the elves and the Númenóreans. Aragorn's ability to heal, as seen later in his treatment of Frodo after the wounds inflicted by the Witch King, underscores his deep connection to the traditions of his ancestors. Mentorship and influence of Elrond. Elrond's influence was paramount in shaping Aragorn's values and worldview. As a half-elven lord who chose to live as a mortal, Elrond embodied the themes of choice, sacrifice, and destiny that would resonate with Aragorn throughout his life. He taught Aragorn not only about history and strategy, but about the burdens of leadership and the importance of compassion. Elrond also imparted the knowledge of the reforging of the sword Narsil. Though the sword was broken when Isildur cut the One Ring from Sauron's hand, it was prophesied that the heir of Isildur would wield the reforged blade Andúril to unite the kingdoms and defeat the Dark Lord. This knowledge prepared Aragorn for the symbolic and practical responsibilities of kingship. The secret life of Estel. Humility and hope. Aragorn's early years were marked by a life of careful secrecy. Known only as Estel in Rivendell, he was shielded from the wider world's dangers, but also lived with the knowledge that one day he would have to reveal his true identity. This secrecy taught him humility and patience, virtues rare among those destined for great power. He grew close to the elven community, learning their ways and gaining a profound respect for their wisdom and longevity. These relationships gave Aragorn a unique perspective, bridging the mortal world and the timeless grace of the elves. His time as Estel also allowed him to forge friendships and alliances that would later prove essential. Notably, he met Gandalf during this period, a connection that would influence much of his journey and support his role in the War of the Ring. The decision to embrace his destiny. As Aragorn matured, the time came to embrace his heritage fully. When he was 20 years old, Elrond revealed his true identity and the responsibilities it entailed. This moment was both liberating and daunting. Aragorn accepted his name and the weight of the kingship that came with it, stepping out from the shadows of secrecy into the light of his destiny. His acceptance marked a turning point. No longer just a hidden hope, Aragorn began to prepare openly for the role he would play in the unfolding struggle against Sauron. This included setting out as a Ranger of the North, adopting the name Strider, and beginning his work to unite the free peoples. The foundation of Aragorn's character. Aragorn's childhood and upbringing are the bedrock upon which all his later actions and decisions stand. The balance of humility and nobility, scholarship and martial skill, hope and duty all stem from this formative period. He learned to lead not from a throne, but from experience, knowledge, and compassion. His youth was also marked by a deep sense of loneliness, Being the last heir of an ancient line isolated him in many ways. Yet this solitude forged his resilience and inner strength, qualities essential for a leader tasked with uniting a fractured world. The years following Aragorn's coming of age were marked by his transformation into Strider, the elusive ranger of the North. This period of his life was critical in shaping him into the man who would one day reclaim the thrones of Arnor and Gondor. Known to most as a wandering protector, Strider's existence was a balance of stealth, vigilance, and quiet heroism. His experiences as a ranger honed his skills, deepened his understanding of Middle-earth's peoples and dangers, and prepared him for the enormous responsibilities that awaited him, taking on the mantle of the ranger. At 20 years old, upon learning his true heritage from Elrond, Aragorn accepted the heavy mantle of his ancestors. Yet, instead of stepping immediately into kingship, he embraced the life of a ranger. The Rangers were the last remnants of the Dunedain in the north, descended from the ancient kingdom of Arnor, now reduced to scattered groups protecting the wild lands from the growing darkness. The Rangers were a mysterious and often misunderstood people. Their skills in tracking, survival, and combat were unmatched, but they were also largely feared or disregarded by the common folk, who knew little of their noble lineage. Aragorn took the name Strider, a fitting moniker that reflected his long, silent journeys across the lands, always watching, always protecting. The duties of a ranger. Strider's role was multifaceted. He patrolled vast wilderness areas, keeping watch for the encroaching forces of Sauron and his servants, including orcs, wargs, and the dreaded Nazgul. Rangers like Aragorn were the unseen guardians who ensured that the realms of men remained safe, even as their kingship had long been forgotten. He became a master tracker, able to follow the faintest trail across varied terrain, and an expert in stealth, capable of moving silently and remaining unseen. His knowledge of herbs, poisons, and healing allowed him to aid the wounded, showing that the Rangers were protectors in the truest sense. Aragorn's years roaming the wild shaped his intimate connection with the land. He knew every forest, mountain, and river, and his respect for nature mirrored the ancient reverence held by the Númenóreans. This bond with the earth and its creatures made him a formidable adversary and a guardian worthy of the legacy he bore. Encounters with hobbits and other peoples. During his time as Strider, Aragorn encountered many races and peoples of Middle-earth, including the hobbits of the Shire. These encounters were crucial in broadening his understanding of the diverse cultures within Middle-earth and honing his diplomatic skills. Although hobbits were often seen as simple folk, Aragorn recognized their courage and resilience, qualities he would later come to rely on during the War of the Ring. His meeting with Gandalf was also a turning point during these years. Gandalf the Grey, a wise and powerful wizard, recognized Aragorn's significance and the crucial role he would play in the unfolding events. Their friendship and alliance strengthened Aragorn's resolve and provided him with a mentor and guide. The reforging of Andúril. One of the defining moments in Aragorn's life during this period was the reforging of the shards of Narsil, the sword that had belonged to his ancestor Isildur. The broken blade was melted down and reforged into Andúril, the flame of the West. This act was symbolic, signaling that the heir of Isildur was rising to claim his rightful place. Andúril was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of kingship and hope to the free peoples. Carrying this sword, Aragorn's confidence and sense of purpose deepened. The reforged blade would accompany him throughout the battles to come and serve as a rallying point for allies. Guardianship of the Shire and Bree. Strider's travels eventually brought him to Bree and the borders of the Shire, where he quietly watched over the hobbits. His protective presence was vital, especially as the shadow of Sauron grew stronger and the forces of darkness sought to seize the One Ring. At Bree, Aragorn established himself as a mysterious yet reliable figure. Though many were wary of him, those who knew of his deeds respected his courage and wisdom. His role was not only to guard, but to prepare for the eventual alliance that would be necessary to confront the rising threat. Preparation for the Fellowship. Strider's years as a ranger were also years of preparation for the events that would lead to the Fellowship of the Ring. he gathered knowledge of Sauron's movements and the political dynamics of Middle-earth, building networks of allies and understanding the broader picture of the conflict. His training was not limited to physical skills, but also included leadership, strategy, and diplomacy. He was aware that one day he would need to lead diverse peoples into battle, unify them under a common cause, and inspire hope where despair threatened to take hold. Aragorn's meeting with the members of the Fellowship of the Ring marks a pivotal moment in both his life and the history of Middle-earth. As Strider, the mysterious ranger of the North, Aragorn enters the narrative, not just as a guardian, but as a key figure destined to play a central role in the quest to destroy the One Ring. This section explores how Aragorn first encounters Frodo and his companions, his decision to join their perilous journey, and the ways in which this alliance shapes the course of the War of the Ring. The meeting at Bree, the road to destiny. The meeting between Aragorn and the hobbits takes place in the town of Bree, a settlement at the crossroads between the Shire and the wider world of Middle-earth. Bree is unique as a place where men and hobbits live side by side, a rare mingling of different cultures and races. Frodo Baggins, along with his loyal friends Samwise Gamgee, Merry Brandybuck, and Pippin Took, arrive in Bree after their dangerous flight from the Shire, carrying the burden of the One Ring. Unbeknownst to most, this simple golden band is the most dangerous object in Middle-earth, capable of bringing about the return of the Dark Lord Sauron. It is in Bree that they first hear of Strider, a figure shrouded in mystery and rumor. Some locals speak of him with suspicion, others with respect. Frodo and his friends are cautious, but recognize the importance of such a figure in a world suddenly fraught with peril. When Aragorn finally reveals himself to them, his demeanor is that of a protector and guide, knowledgeable about the dangers ahead and deeply invested in the fate of the ring-bearer. Aragorn's knowledge and warning. From the very first encounter, Aragorn displays an intimate understanding of the growing darkness. He warns Frodo and the hobbits of the pursuit by the ring-wraiths, the Nazgul, servants of Sauron bent on reclaiming the ring. His knowledge of these dark riders, their powers and their weaknesses, provides critical guidance. Aragorn's warning is not merely about physical dangers, but also about the larger stakes involved. He understands that the ring's destruction is crucial for the survival of Middle-earth, and that the journey will require courage, sacrifice, and steadfastness. He offers his protection and guidance, not out of mere duty, but from a deep commitment to the cause. Aragorn's awareness of his own destiny, linked to the fate of the ring and the free peoples, propels him to take an active role in the unfolding events, leading the hobbits from Bree. After their meeting, Aragorn leads Frodo and his companions out of Bree, guiding them through dangerous lands to keep them safe from the pursuing Nazgul. This journey is perilous, filled with tense moments of close calls and threats. Aragorn's skills as a ranger come to the fore as he navigates through forests, mountains, and shadowed paths. His leadership during this time solidifies his role not just as a protector but as a trusted companion. The hobbits, initially wary of this enigmatic ranger, begin to trust and depend on him. Aragorn's calm courage and resourcefulness help to steady them in moments of fear and uncertainty. The road to Rivendell. Aragorn's ultimate goal during this part of the journey is to bring the hobbits safely to Rivendell, the elven refuge, where they will find allies and counsel. This is no small task, as the road is fraught with enemies and the ring's corrupting influence. Throughout this trek, Aragorn demonstrates his deep knowledge of Middle-earth's geography, languages, and peoples. He understands the political and military landscape and navigates the complexities of traveling through hostile territories. His connection to Rivendell is personal and profound. Raised there by Elrond, Aragorn knows it as a place of wisdom and safety. It is here that the wider fellowship will form, setting the stage for the quest to destroy the One Ring. Joining the fellowship, at the Council of Elrond, convened to decide the fate of the ring, Aragorn openly acknowledges his true identity as the heir of Isildur and rightful king of Arnor and Gondor. This revelation carries great weight, as it symbolizes the return of hope for the free peoples. Aragorn volunteers to lead the fellowship on the quest, a task requiring both leadership and sacrifice. His acceptance is met with respect and relief, as his experience and lineage make him uniquely qualified for the role. The Fellowship itself is a diverse group, comprising representatives of men, elves, dwarves, and hobbits. Aragorn's ability to bridge these different cultures and command their trust is a testament to his character and training. The symbolism of Strider's transformation. Aragorn's transition from Strider, the Lone Ranger, to leader of the Fellowship is symbolic of his acceptance of his destiny. Where once he walked alone, hidden and cautious, he now steps into the light as a leader willing to bear the burdens of his heritage. This transformation is not just about leadership, but about identity. Joining the Fellowship means Aragorn embraces the path to kingship, recognizing that the fate of Middle-earth rests in part on his shoulders. His presence inspires courage and unity among the Fellowship, serving as a constant reminder of the ancient line of kings and the hope they represent. The early trials of the Fellowship. As the Fellowship sets out from Rivendell, Aragorn's leadership is immediately tested. The journey ahead is fraught with dangers, treacherous landscapes, hostile forces, and internal tensions. Aragorn must balance the needs and fears of the diverse group while navigating threats that loom at every turn. His knowledge of the lands and peoples becomes invaluable as the Fellowship faces challenges such as the passage through the mines of Moria and the shelter of Lothlorien. Throughout these trials, Aragorn's calm decisiveness and bravery bolster the morale of the group. Aragorn's leadership and presence during the Fellowship's journey were crucial in guiding the diverse group through some of the most perilous moments in Middle-earth's history. As the rightful heir to the thrones of Arnor and Gondor, his role went beyond that of a mere guide or warrior. He was the anchor of hope, wisdom, and strength for the Fellowship. This section delves into the many ways Aragorn shaped the Fellowship's path, the decisions he made, and how he balanced his own inner conflicts with the urgent demands of their mission. The burden of leadership. From the moment the Fellowship departed Rivendell, Aragorn found himself in a position of immense responsibility. The Fellowship was composed of individuals from different races and backgrounds: hobbits, a wizard, a dwarf, an elf, and men each with their own skills, personalities, and doubts. Aragorn's ability to unify and lead this group required diplomacy, patience, and strategic thinking. He often acted as the de facto leader, especially during times when Gandalf was incapacitated or absent. Aragorn's leadership was marked by quiet authority. He led by example and earned the respect of his companions through courage and wisdom rather than by mere command. Navigating the wilderness and facing danger. One of Aragorn's key roles was as a skilled tracker and ranger, essential in navigating the hazardous and unfamiliar terrain the Fellowship encountered. From the wilds of the Trollshaws to the treacherous paths of the Misty Mountains, Aragorn's knowledge of the land and its dangers was vital. His keen senses allowed the Fellowship to avoid or prepare for many threats, including orc patrols, wild beasts, and the ever-looming danger of the Ringwraiths. Aragorn's ability to read signs and interpret subtle clues often made the difference between survival and disaster. The Mines of Moria. Courage amid darkness. One of the Fellowship's most harrowing challenges was the journey through the Mines of Moria. After Gandalf's fall battling the Balrog, Aragorn's leadership was tested in the face of despair and uncertainty. He had to maintain morale while guiding the group through dark, hostile tunnels filled with danger. Aragorn's combat skills shone during battles against orcs and the monstrous cave troll. His resolve and determination helped the Fellowship press onward despite the loss of their wizard and the overwhelming sense of doom. Lothlorien, the refuge of the elves. Upon emerging from Moria, the Fellowship found sanctuary in Lothlorien, the elven realm ruled by Galadriel and Celeborn. Here, Aragorn's respect for the elves and his diplomatic skills facilitated their welcome. The Fellowship rested and gained renewed strength, aided by the gifts given by Galadriel, including the reforged sword Andúril. This respite was critical, allowing Aragorn and the others to prepare for the difficult road ahead. The time in Lothlorien also deepened Aragorn's connection to the ancient powers of Middle-earth and reminded him of the stakes of the quest. The breaking of the Fellowship and Aragorn's decision. When the fellowship broke at Amon Hen after Boromir's fall, Aragorn faced one of his most difficult decisions. With Frodo and Sam choosing to continue the quest alone, Aragorn had to decide whether to follow them or aid Merry and Pippin, who had been captured by orcs. Aragorn chose to pursue the captors of Merry and Pippin, demonstrating his commitment to loyalty and honor. This decision also signaled his transition from protector of the Ring-Bearer to a leader of the forces opposing Sauron in other critical ways. Pursuit and alliance with Legolas and Gimli. Aragorn's pursuit of the orcs who had taken Merry and Pippin led him to join forces with Legolas the elf and Gimli the dwarf. Their alliance, despite historical enmity between their races, symbolized the growing unity among Middle-earth's free peoples against the darkness. Together, they tracked the orcs into Rohan and later into the Kingdom of Gondor, navigating dangerous territories and facing numerous foes. Aragorn's leadership and ability to inspire cooperation between these disparate companions were crucial to their survival and effectiveness. Aragorn's growing acceptance of his destiny. Throughout the Fellowship's journey and its aftermath, Aragorn's awareness of his destiny as the heir of Isildur and the future king deepened. The trials he faced tested not only his skills but his resolve to claim the throne and lead the fight against Sauron. Carrying Andúril, the reforged sword, was a constant reminder of his heritage and responsibilities. Aragorn began to more openly embrace his identity, preparing himself for the greater challenges that lay ahead. Leadership. Beyond the Fellowship. Even after the Fellowship dissolved, Aragorn's leadership remained vital. His decisions and actions in pursuit of the orcs, his alliances with key figures like King Theoden of Rohan, and his eventual command of the Army of the Dead demonstrated his growth from ranger to king. Aragorn's role during this period bridged the gap between the mission of the Fellowship and the broader war against Sauron. His actions ensured that the Free Peoples had a fighting chance and set the stage for the eventual confrontation at Minas Tirith and beyond. After the breaking of the Fellowship, Aragorn's path led him deep into the heart of Rohan, a land of horse lords and ancient honor, now besieged by the growing forces of darkness. His time in Rohan tested not just his sword arm, but his patience, wisdom, and growing leadership. No longer just a protector of Frodo or a wandering ranger, Aragorn began to step more fully into the role of a unifier, a figure who would bridge kingdoms and turn the tide of war. The chase across the plains. Aragorn's pursuit of Merry and Pippin through the fields of Rohan alongside Legolas and Gimli was relentless. With little food or rest, the trio covered vast distances on foot, driven by both duty and desperation. The orcs who had taken the hobbits were Uruk-hai, stronger, faster, and more disciplined than their Mordor kin, making the chase more daunting by the hour. But Aragorn's skill as a tracker proved essential. Reading traces others would miss, he found broken leaves, cut bindings, footprints, and even signs of resistance from the hobbits. His connection with nature and his relentless determination gave hope even in exhaustion. For Aragorn, this was not only a race to save friends but a proving ground for his growing sense of responsibility toward the peoples of Middle-earth. Encounter with the riders of Rohan. Eventually, Aragorn's group encountered Éomer and the riders of Rohan, who had slain the orc band during their own patrols. This meeting was fraught with tension. Éomer, though noble, was wary of strangers, especially at a time when his people were on edge and his own position within Rohan was politically fragile. Here, Aragorn began to wield not just his sword but his heritage. He declared his true lineage to Éomer. "I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and am called Elessar, the Elfstone, Dúnedain, the heir of Isildur Elendil's son of Gondor," a moment of significance that showed Aragorn's growing readiness to embrace his birthright in front of other noble houses. Éomer, recognizing something noble and commanding in Aragorn, lent him horses and a warning. War was coming, and Saruman, once the leader of the White Council, had betrayed the Free Peoples. Rohan was under siege from within and without. Aragorn realized that the war for Middle-earth was already underway. The journey into Fangorn Forest. Tracking the hobbit's last known trail led Aragorn into the ancient and mysterious Fangorn Forest, What they found defied expectations. Merry and Pippin were safe, having been protected by Treebeard and the Ents. But more importantly, they found someone thought lost, Gandalf. Now reborn as Gandalf the White, the wizard's return marked a turning point. Aragorn's reunion with Gandalf was more than a moment of joy. It was a reminder that hope endured. Gandalf now bore greater power and authority, and he quickly brought news of Saruman's growing threat. The wizard urged them to act swiftly. They must aid Rohan and prepare for war. This encounter shifted Aragorn's focus from rescue to strategy. With Gandalf's guidance, Aragorn took a central role in planning the defense of Rohan, knowing that the battles to come would shape the fate of all free peoples. Entering Helm's Deep. One of Aragorn's most defining trials in Rohan came at Helm's Deep, an ancient fortress carved into the mountains. When Saruman unleashed his full army of Uruk-hai upon the kingdom, King Theoden chose to retreat to Helm's Deep with his people. Aragorn joined him, fully aware that it might become a death trap. At Helm's Deep, Aragorn's leadership was on full display. He became a voice of resolve and unity among the desperate defenders. Where Theoden wavered and many despaired, Aragorn rallied the people. He urged men to stand fast, to believe in courage and in one another. He led sorties against the enemy, inspiring others with both valor and presence. Aragorn's relationship with Theoden also evolved. Initially mistrustful of outside counsel, Theoden grew to respect Aragorn as a true leader and equal. This bond would prove vital in the coming war, as alliances among men were the only hope of resisting Sauron's overwhelming might. The return of hope. The siege of Helm's Deep was brutal. Outnumbered, the defenders seemed destined to fall. But as dawn broke, Gandalf returned with Eomer and his riders. The charge down the hill shattered Saruman's army, and the battle was won. Aragorn's role in the victory was more than military. He had become a symbol of resistance, someone who could stand in the shadow of darkness and not falter. Whispers began to circulate. Who was this man who fought like Elendil of old? Could he truly be the king who was foretold? The victory also signaled to the other free peoples that the tide could be turned. If Rohan could survive against such odds, then there was still time to unite against Mordor. Aragorn understood this deeply. War was no longer a distant shadow. It had arrived, and all would be swept up in it. Confrontation with Saruman. Following the victory, Aragorn and the others rode to Isengard to confront Saruman, who had been defeated by the Ents and imprisoned in his own tower. Though it was Gandalf who spoke with Saruman, Aragorn observed carefully. He saw firsthand what ambition, pride, and the lure of power could do to even the wisest of beings. Saruman, once the greatest of the Istari, had fallen to Sauron's influence and to his own thirst for control. This served as a stark warning. Aragorn, as a future king, would need to wield power differently, to unite rather than dominate, to serve rather than rule from fear. At Isengard, Aragorn also recovered tokens of great significance, including the Palantir, one of the ancient seeing stones. Though it would later bring danger, it was a relic tied to his Númenórean heritage. Every step drew Aragorn closer to his destiny, and the choices he made now would echo through the war to come. Awakening the king. After Helm's Deep and the fall of Isengard, Aragorn was no longer simply Strider to those around him. In the eyes of both men and elves, he had begun to emerge as the king he was born to be. Elrond's message to Aragorn, delivered later through his sons, would confirm this evolution. He urged Aragorn to take the paths of the dead, a forgotten, cursed road that only the true King of Gondor could walk. The time had come, not only to fight, but to claim. Aragorn's trials in Rohan forged him anew. He had won battles not just with blade and bow, but with honor, courage, and faith. Where others faltered, he stood. Where others questioned, he led. Now, the road ahead would take him deeper into shadow, but he would not go as a ranger. He would go as a king in waiting. With the war for Middle-earth accelerating, and Sauron's armies threatening to overwhelm Gondor, Aragorn faced a fateful crossroads, one that would either seal his legacy or consume him in darkness. At this point in his journey, Aragorn was no longer merely reacting to events, but actively shaping them. In this section of his life, we witness him step fully into his destiny, embracing both his heritage and his responsibilities as Isildur's heir. The road he chose, the legendary paths of the dead, was one no living man had dared walk in centuries, and only one bearing the true blood of Elendil could hope to emerge from it alive. Elrond's message, a summons to claim the throne. Following the Battle of Helm's Deep and the confrontation with Saruman at Isengard, Aragorn's path took a pivotal turn. He was approached by Elrond's sons, Elladan and Elrohir, who bore a powerful message from their father. The time had come for Aragorn to take the paths of the dead. Elrond knew that Gondor would not stand unless Aragorn fulfilled the prophecy and summoned the army of the dead, the cursed souls who had once broken their oath to Isildur and lingered in torment beneath the White Mountains. Aragorn did not hesitate. Though the path ahead was shrouded in fear and death, he understood that he could no longer delay assuming his birthright. The fate of the West depended not only on courage in battle, but on boldness in leadership. With the reforged sword Andúril at his side, the Flame of the West, Aragorn accepted the mantle of king, not in title but in action. Andúril, Flame of the West. Before entering the paths, Aragorn wielded Andúril, the reforged blade from the shards of Narsil. This sword, once broken during the battle with Sauron at the end of the Second Age, had been a symbol of the fallen line of kings. Now, reforged in Rivendell and bearing new Elvish inscriptions, it symbolized Aragorn's rise and the rekindling of Númenórean strength. More than a weapon, Andúril was a symbol, an unmistakable declaration of his claim to Gondor. Those who saw the sword would know who he was and what he represented, the return of the king. As he prepared to walk a road of ghosts and forgotten oaths, Aragorn carried with him not just steel but centuries of unfulfilled destiny. The road to the Dwemerberg. Aragorn, along with Legolas, Gimli, and the Rangers of the North, known as the Grey Company, traveled to the Dimholt, a haunted region beneath the shadow of the White Mountains. The entrance to the paths of the dead lay in the mountain of Dwemerberg, where few dared tread. The legends were clear. Any who entered the paths without the blood of Isildur would never return. Even the bravest warriors trembled at its name. But Aragorn did not turn back. He was guided not only by courage but by necessity. The only hope for Gondor's survival lay in breaking the stalemate by bringing an army that Sauron could not anticipate or defend against. Through shadow and silence, the paths of the dead. Inside the mountain, the darkness was absolute, and fear clung to the walls like a living thing. The army of the dead, ethereal spirits of oathbreakers from the Second Age, watched Aragorn's passage, unseen but felt. Their whispers haunted the air. Even Gimli, one of the bravest dwarves alive, was shaken to his core. But Aragorn pressed forward, speaking words with the weight of ancient authority. As the heir of Isildur, he had the right to command them, and he invoked the ancient pact that had bound them. To fulfill their oath and be released from their torment, they must fight for him. The dead hesitated at first, bound by fear and centuries of bitterness, but Aragorn's bearing, his sword, and his certainty broke through the mists of time. They followed him first as shadows, then as a wave of silent wrath. Gondor in peril. As Aragorn traveled through the mountains, the city of Minas Tirith faced annihilation. Sauron's armies were marching. The skies blackened, and despair clung to the walls. Denethor, the steward of Gondor, had lost hope. He had refused to call for aid in time, and had succumbed to madness and grief, believing that all was lost. Aragorn knew he had to act swiftly. He did not go directly to Minas Tirith, but sailed south to Pelargir, where corsair ships from Umbar Sauron's allies threatened Gondor's coast. It was there that Aragorn unleashed the power of the dead. The Battle of Pelargir, Vengeance of the Dead. At Pelargir, the corsairs were preparing to strike a fatal blow against Gondor. Their massive black ships, loaded with men and fire, would have cut off the realm from its allies. But they were not prepared for what came out of the mountains. With the dead sweeping over the decks like a silent plague, the corsairs fell without resistance. Terrified by a foe they could not touch or kill, They abandoned their ships or fell screaming into the river. In one swift, supernatural stroke, Aragorn turned the tide. The ships were now Gondor's, and with the dead still bound to his will, Aragorn sailed north with the Grey Company and the armies of southern Gondor, racing to reach Minas Tirith before it fell. The black ships at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. To those in Minas Tirith, the sight of the black sails approaching the Harland was the sign of doom. The people believed the corsairs had come to finish them. But in a twist of fate, Aragorn emerged from the ships at the head of Gondor's salvation. The dead, unleashed upon the field of battle, turned the tide. Though they were eerie and silent, their fury was undeniable. The orcs, trolls, and easterlings broke before them. The Pelennor fields were drenched in blood, but the city did not fall. After the battle, Aragorn released the dead, their oaths fulfilled at last. Their spirits faded like mist in the morning sun, finally at peace after centuries of torment. Aragorn had proven that he was not just the heir to the throne, but a king worthy of honor and loyalty. Healer and leader, Aragorn did not immediately take the throne after the victory. He tended the wounded, walking among the people of Gondor not as a ruler demanding a crown, but as a healer and servant. In the houses of healing, he used the herb Athalas Kingsfoil to save the lives of Faramir, Eowyn, and Merry. The people whispered an ancient saying, "The hands of the king are the hands of a healer." Hope stirred anew. He remained humble, waiting for the people of Gondor to call for his kingship rather than seizing it by force. His restraint and wisdom won him not only loyalty but love. With the Battle of the Pelennor Fields behind him and the tide momentarily shifted in Gondor's favor, Aragorn faced the gravest challenge yet, bringing the war to Sauron's doorstep. He was no longer the hidden ranger of the north, nor the solitary traveler walking in shadows. Now, Aragorn acted as a general, a king in all but name, and a symbol of resistance for the free peoples of Middle-earth. The fate of the world hung on his choices. Victory was still uncertain, and Sauron's forces vastly outnumbered those of the West. Yet Aragorn, understanding that the ring had to be destroyed in secret, resolved to do the unthinkable march on the Black Gate of Mordor itself as a diversion, hoping to draw Sauron's eye away from Frodo and Sam as they struggled toward Mount Doom. The council at Minas Tirith. After the Pelennor Fields, the captains of the West gathered at Minas Tirith to assess their next move. Aragorn stood alongside Gandalf, Éomer of Rohan, Prince Imrahil of Dol Amroth, and the remnants of the Fellowship. They knew that despite their recent victory, they could not withstand a full-scale siege from Mordor. Sauron's armies, still vast and mustered, were waiting across the Anduin in Mordor and the lands beyond. Yet there was no sign of Frodo, no word from the ring-bearer. The enemy was still unaware of the true location of the One Ring, and Gandalf proposed a desperate gamble to launch a feint attack on Mordor itself to distract the eye of Sauron, buying Frodo time to complete his task. It was a move that required a leader of immense courage and authority, one who could inspire men to march to what might be their deaths. Aragorn stepped forward. He would lead the host of the West. The host of the West marches. Aragorn gathered a small but determined force, some 7,000 men comprised of soldiers from Gondor, Rohan, and the southern fiefs. Though few in number compared to the legions of Mordor, their hearts were resolute. As they marched through Ithilien, Aragorn led not only with tactical precision but with spiritual strength, offering hope where there should have been none. He bore the banner that Arwen had made for him, black with the emblem of the white tree and the 7 stars, signifying his claim to the throne of Gondor and Arnor. He no longer hid his identity. His kingship was now a rallying standard. Every step toward Mordor was a march into growing shadow. The land itself seemed to resist them, as if poisoned by Sauron's will. But Aragorn pressed onward, knowing that their march was not for conquest, but for salvation. The Black Gate of Mordor. When the host of the West reached the Black Gate Morannon, they found it sealed and guarded by an overwhelming force. Aragorn halted his army and prepared for battle, but not before one final diplomatic gesture. A parley was requested. and the mouth of Sauron, a twisted and cruel servant of the Dark Lord, emerged. He mocked the captains and revealed Frodo's mithril shirt as proof that the ring-bearer had been captured. Though a lie, it sent fear through the ranks. Aragorn did not flinch. When the mouth of Sauron dared to question his authority, Aragorn responded by cutting off his head without a word. It was not merely anger, but an act of defiance, a refusal to bend the knee to evil. The gate opened. The armies of Mordor poured forth in a torrent of orcs, trolls, easterlings, and foul beasts. The final battle had begun. The battle before the gate. The Battle of the Morannon was desperate. Aragorn fought at the forefront, his sword Andúril blazing like fire, his presence a beacon amid the chaos. He stood with the remaining members of the Fellowship: Gandalf, Legolas, Gimli, Pippin, and Merry, each performing deeds of great valor. The battle raged with hopeless odds, yet Aragorn fought not as one who believed in certain victory, but as one who had made peace with death in service of a cause greater than himself. His courage steadied the hearts of others. Even as the forces of Mordor encircled them, Aragorn rallied his men into a last stand on the rocky hill before the gate. But in truth, their battle was a decoy. Frodo and Sam were nearing Mount Doom, carrying the burden of the ring. Aragorn's gamble was working. Sauron's gaze was fixed upon the battlefield, blind to the danger approaching from behind. The ring is destroyed. At the height of battle, just as all seemed lost, the world changed. Mount Doom erupted in a violent storm of fire and ash. The eye of Sauron shrieked and collapsed inward. The dark tower of Barad-dûr crumbled. The ring had been destroyed. Aragorn, though unaware of the exact details in that moment, knew instinctively that the tide had turned. The enemy host faltered. Many fled or fell in confusion. Sauron's will had been broken. The shadow had passed. The field of battle went silent, and those who had survived stood in awe. Against all odds, the free peoples of Middle-earth had triumphed, not through might alone, but through sacrifice and hope. The return of the king. In the days that followed, Aragorn's role as king became undeniable. He entered the city of Minas Tirith not as a conqueror, but as a healer and restorer. His first act was to tend to the wounded in the houses of healing, fulfilling the old prophecy. The hands of the king are the hands of a healer. He did not claim the crown until the people of Gondor called for him to do so. In a grand ceremony on the day of the New Year, the day Sauron fell, Aragorn was crowned King Elessar Telcontar by Gandalf, with a white crown upon his brow and Andúril at his side. The people sang, wept, and rejoiced. The king had returned, not merely to reclaim a throne, but to begin a new age of peace and renewal. With the defeat of Sauron and the fall of Barad-dûr, the long night that had gripped Middle-earth came to an end. In its place dawned the Fourth Age, the Age of Men. At the center of this new era stood Aragorn, now crowned King Elessar Telcontar, the High King of the reunited kingdom of Gondor and Arnor. His reign would be remembered as one of the greatest in the history of Arda, not merely for its grandeur and peace, but for how it bridged the broken legacies of the past with a vision of hope and unity. The coronation and symbolism of renewal. Aragorn's coronation was far more than a political event. It was the symbolic healing of a fractured world. Gondor had been without a king for nearly 1,000 years, governed instead by stewards who preserved its traditions but could never fully reclaim its lost glory. The return of the king fulfilled ancient prophecies, such as the one inscribed on the hilt of Andúril: "Renewed shall be blade that was broken, the crownless again shall be king." When Aragorn ascended the throne, he chose the royal name Elessar, meaning Elfstone, a name given to him by Galadriel long ago in Lothlorien. It signified not only his elven ties through his love for Arwen, but also his role as a bringer of healing and renewal. His line, the House of Telcontar, taken from the Elvish word for Strider, the name by which he was once known, would go on to rule the reunited kingdom for more than a century under his guidance and his descendants afterward. Uniting Gondor and Arnor. One of King Elessar's greatest early achievements was the reunification of Gondor and Arnor, the two great kingdoms of men that had long been divided. Gondor, in the south, had stood valiantly against Sauron for generations, while Arnor in the north had fallen into ruin after centuries of decline and war with Angmar. Aragorn worked tirelessly to restore the lost northern cities and rebuild the kingdom his ancestors once ruled. He traveled north to Númenórean, once the capital of Arnor, and began its reconstruction. Roads were repaired, watchtowers restored, and settlements repopulated. He sought not just to rebuild cities, but to rekindle the spirit of a kingdom long thought lost. This reunification also meant the restoration of ancient traditions. The Palantiri, the seeing stones of old, were reclaimed and safeguarded. Forgotten bloodlines and noble houses were revived. Aragorn honored both the southern traditions of Gondor and the ancient heritage of the north. Justice, law, and governance. Elessar ruled with wisdom and fairness. One of his first acts as king was to pardon all former enemies who laid down their arms, including the Southrons and Easterlings, so long as they vowed to live in peace. He understood that healing Middle-earth would require reconciliation, not endless vengeance. He issued new laws, but also respected ancient customs. He restored the authority of local leaders in the provinces and fiefs, creating a balance between centralized power and regional autonomy. Courts of law were reformed to ensure justice for all, not just the powerful. The stewardship was honored, not abolished. Faramir, the surviving son of Denethor, was named Prince of Ithilien and continued to serve as Aragorn's right hand in Gondor. This act ensured that the legacy of the stewards was not erased, but woven into the fabric of the new kingdom. The restoration of Minas Tirith and the White Tree, Minas Tirith, long scarred by war, was lovingly restored under Elessar's rule. Damaged walls were rebuilt, towers repaired, and the city's glory reborn. In the court of the fountain, Aragorn planted a sapling of the White Tree, found in the snow-capped slopes of Mindalluin. This living symbol of the line of kings blossomed once more, a sign that the king had returned and the land was healing. His rule also restored dignity and strength to the knights of Gondor, as well as the rangers of the north, who now served as elite guardians of the realm. The capital became a melting pot of peoples from across Middle-earth, symbolizing the unification and coexistence that Aragorn championed. Diplomatic relations and alliances. Elessar was not only a warrior king but a skilled diplomat. He worked to forge peace with former enemies and strengthen bonds with allies. To the east, emissaries were sent to the lands of the Haradrim and Easterlings. Treaties were formed with those willing to put down arms. Rather than rule through subjugation, Aragorn offered peace and trade, aiming to break the cycles of hatred that had long fueled war. He maintained strong ties with Rohan, honoring the ancient alliance by reaffirming the Oath of Eorel, and he considered King Éomer a close friend and brother in arms. He gifted Éomer with lands and supported the rebuilding of Rohan after the war. To the west, relations with the elves were preserved as long as they remained in Middle-earth. Though most were departing to the Undying Lands, Aragorn ensured that those who stayed, such as Legolas and his kin, were respected and protected. Marriage to Arwen and the Elven legacy. Aragorn's reign was blessed and legitimized by his marriage to Arwen Undomiel, daughter of Elrond and granddaughter of Galadriel. Their wedding symbolized the union of elves and men, two peoples long separated by history and tragedy. Arwen chose a mortal life for Aragorn's sake, mirroring the ancient story of Luthien and Beren, and their love became legendary. Together they ruled with wisdom and compassion, blending the strength of the Númenórean line with the grace of the elves. Arwen bore Aragorn a son, Eldarion, and daughters whose names remain unknown. Through Eldarion, the bloodlines of both elves and men continued, uniting the houses of Elros and Elrond. Cultural revival and preservation. Under Elessar's reign, there was a revival of learning, art, and culture. Libraries were restored, ancient texts copied and preserved. Songs were sung again in halls that had long fallen silent. He encouraged the recording of history, including the Red Book of Westmarch, which chronicled the journey of the ring-bearers and the deeds of the Fellowship. Hobbits, once obscure, were celebrated across the land. The Shire was granted a perpetual protection edict, forbidding any men from entering its borders without permission. Aragorn never returned to the Shire, but always cherished its people, especially Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin, whose heroism helped make his kingship possible. The tale of Aragorn Elessar, son of Arathorn, was one of valor, sacrifice, and destiny fulfilled. Yet even for one of Númenórean blood, a lineage blessed with long lifetime eventually called him home. Aragorn's death was not a tragedy, but the dignified conclusion to a life fully lived. As the Fourth Age of Middle-earth dawned under his rule, his passing marked the end of an era, yet the legacy he left behind would endure through the ages of men. The long years of peace. Aragorn ruled the reunited kingdom for 122 years. Under his steady hand, Gondor and Arnor thrived as never before. The lands healed from the scars of the War of the Ring. Cities were rebuilt, trade flourished, and peace spread beyond the borders of the realm. The king remained close to his allies and companions throughout his reign. He maintained his bond with King Éomer of Rohan, his brother-in-arms, and welcomed Legolas and Gimli when they came to visit. Faramir served loyally as Prince of Ithilien and Steward of Gondor, while the remaining members of the Fellowship each played their roles in the restoration of Middle-earth. Though peace had returned, Aragorn never became complacent. He continued to patrol his kingdom and ensure justice. He remained humble, often walking among his people and ruling not from above, but alongside them. His wisdom, courage, and compassion won him the unwavering love of his subjects, the grace of the Númenóreans. Unlike other men, Aragorn was of the Dunedain, descended from Elros, the brother of Elrond, who chose mortality at the beginning of the Second Age. The blood of Númenor ran strong in him, giving him great wisdom, strength, and a lifespan many times that of ordinary men. With this blessing also came a great gift, the ability to choose the time of his death, a privilege granted only to the noblest of the line of Elros. As he aged and began to feel the weariness of the world settling in, Aragorn knew that his time had come. He did not cling to life, nor did he seek to delay the inevitable. He chose, as his ancestors had done before him, to lay down his life with dignity and grace. He passed the crown of Gondor and Arnor to his son, Eldarion, who had been raised with wisdom and trained in the arts of war and rule. Aragorn ensured that Eldarion would continue the line and rule justly in his stead. Then, having fulfilled every duty he had been given, he prepared to pass beyond the circles of the world. His final farewell. In the year 120 of the Fourth Age, Aragorn journeyed to the House of the Kings, the great tombs of Gondor. There he lay upon a bed of stone, robed in white, with the crown of Gondor at his feet, and the shards of Narsil, now Andúril, at his side. Arwen came to him in those final moments. Their farewell was among the most tragic and tender in the annals of Middle-earth. Arwen, who had given up her immortality for his love, stood beside him as he departed this world. Aragorn told her not to grieve, for he had known a full life, and they would meet again beyond the bounds of Arda. But for Arwen, that hope was faint, and her sorrow immeasurable. With calm resolve and a final breath, Aragorn willed his spirit to depart, as Elros had done before him. Thus passed Elessar Telcontar, the greatest king of men in the Third and Fourth Ages, and the last great bridge between the ages of elves and men. Arwen's grief and the passing of the Evenstar. Arwen's sorrow was deeper than any mortal could bear. Having chosen a mortal life for Aragorn's sake, she had tied her fate to his. When he died, she remained only as a shadow of her former self, unable to find joy in the world they had once shared. She left Minas Tirith and returned to Lothlorien, now empty and silent after the departure of Galadriel and Celeborn. There, in the fading woods of her childhood, Arwen laid herself down on Seren Amroth, where she and Aragorn had once pledged their love. There she passed away, her soul seeking him beyond the world. Thus ended the line of the half-elven in Middle-earth, the legacy of Elessar. Though Aragorn was gone, his legacy endured in many forms. His son Eldarion ruled wisely and well, carrying the blood of elves and men into future generations. Under Eldarion, The reunited kingdom remained strong, and the peace won by his father held for many years. The House of Telcontar, founded by Aragorn, became a beacon of unity, wisdom, and strength. The name of Elessar was remembered not just in Gondor and Arnor, but across the free lands of Middle-earth. His deeds were sung by minstrels, written in tomes, and passed down through the ages. Aragorn also left behind a legacy of values, humility, courage, and the will to do what is right, even when the cost is high. His reign had not been about power, but service. He had worn the crown not for glory, but to heal a broken world. The people of Gondor remembered him as Envinyatar, the Renewer, for he had brought life and light back to lands darkened by centuries of war. Others called him Estel, meaning hope, the name given to him as a child by Elrond, and the gift he gave back to Middle-earth. Remembering the king, in the years following his death, Aragorn's tomb in the House of the Kings became a place of reverence. Pilgrims came from across Middle-earth to pay tribute to the man who had led them out of shadow. Statues were carved in his likeness, songs written in his honor. But the greatest tribute was not carved in stone. It lived in the peace that followed his rule, the friendships between peoples once divided, and the thriving cultures that rose from the ashes of war. The Shire remained untouched. Rohan stood proudly beside Gondor, and the lands of men spread in prosperity. In the end, Aragorn fulfilled every prophecy laid before him. He was the heir of Isildur, who did not fall to weakness. He was the man who united kingdoms, who loved an elf, who bore the sword reforged, and who led the final charge against the Dark Lord. He passed from the world not in battle, but in wisdom, after ensuring that the world he fought for would flourish without him. His tale remains one of the most profound and inspiring in all the lore of Middle-earth, a reminder that greatness is not in the blood alone, but in the choices made, the burdens accepted, and the light kept burning in the darkest of times.